What problem we are trying to solve here? Before discussing what is NoSQL, let's discuss what challenges we were facing with traditional RDBMS systems. RDBMS have increasingly failed to meet the performance, scalability and flexibility needs that next-generation data-intensive applications require. Scalability: users have to scale relational database on powerful servers that are expensive and difficult to handle. And if you scale relational database by distributing it onto multiple servers, then handling tables across different servers is difficult. Flexibility: in SQL servers, data has to fit into tables anyhow. If your data doesn't fit into tables, then you need to design your database structure that will be complex, and again it will be more difficult to handle. There is no flexibility. What is NoSQL? NoSQL, which stand for Not Only SQL or No Structure Query Language, is a database system which is employed for managing the massive collection of unstructured data. NoSQL solves both problems of scalability and flexibility. NoSQL means not only SQL. It is important to note that NoSQL and non-relational data are not the same thing. So NoSQL databases can be used for both relational and non-relational data. Many customers of Azure Cosmos DB use this NoSQL database to store relational data. Cosmos DB SQL API also supports SQL-like queries. Scalability: the scaling is much cheaper for NoSQL databases because in NoSQL we can scale horizontally when relational database had to be scaled vertically. Vertically scalable means that you are increasing the load on a single server by adding more RAM or CPU. Horizontally scalable involves adding more servers to process requests. As we discussed, because of global distribution, horizontal scaling was very difficult for relational databases. Therefore, relational database use vertical scaling, means getting a better and bigger machine for their database engine, but vertical scalable has a limit. You can't keep adding more RAM or CPU in single machine. But scaling is much cheaper for NoSQL databases because you don't need to scale up. You can have many cheap machines and scale your database horizontally. Flexibility: in traditional database, where data is placed in tables and data schema have to be designed before the database is built. In contrast, NoSQL databases do not rely on these pre-built schema structures and use more flexible approach to data models. For example, if you are creating a new application, and you need to store information about an order placed by customer using a relational database, you will first need to create a table with a fixed schema and predict all the columns you want to have for the order and person objects, for example, first name, last name, email, age. And then you need to design order detail table with all required columns. This is not the case for a NoSQL database. In a NoSQL database, the data is not saved in tables. For example, instead of creating a table named order and adding columns into it, you create a JSON structure for the object. You don't need to define the schema first. It makes it easier to update the application and data based on the requirement changes. Back in the day, we had a good understanding of the data structure when starting the project. In many of today's projects, you don't have a clear understanding of the data structure, so NoSQL databases are a good choice for these projects. These databases are designed to handle unstructured data. Let's take another example. So this is an order, it has a date, and has a customer. So in transaction you can simply store in JSON document. You do not need a table or relationships with other tables, or you do not need to point it to something else. So it is easy for system to handle information here. It is easy to add or delete this entry. I would also like to point here that, if you notice, it's not enforcing a schema here. So you can have one entry for the products that has name and quantity. And then the second product has name and quantity and status field. So the status field can exist, but it's not required to exist. So you can have different schemas for the same piece of data. And it's up to your application to be able to handle that. NoSQL databases are increasingly used in big data and real-time web applications. NoSQL databases are typically used for scenarios when you have a large amount of data, and the relationship between pieces of data isn't that important. And the data has a high likelihood of changing over time.